sometimes it pays off to do a lot of pre-production work and pre-planning before we actually create our animations. One of the advantages that this environment offers us is that we can create what we call embedded animations. That is to create self-contained animations with their own timeline and then have those overlap or play on top of our main movie clips or our main programs. So as an example, let's take a look at what we have on the screen right now. This is an animation that, as you can see when I expand its timeline, occupies frame 1. That's all that is in this particular animation. If I test this movie, which by the way, it is a canvas movie, meaning it's HTML5 driven, what you're about to see will create a preview of this, create an actual HTML5 document in a JavaScript file, as you saw in lecture 3, I believe it was, when we talked about this. This will generate that for you, and it will save it onto a folder. If you grab that JavaScript file and that HTML5 document and place them on a web server, then they will play online just like any other HTML5 document. So with that said, let's go ahead and test this by pressing Control Enter or Command Return on the Mac. It will create the HTML5 document, and as you can see, it created a new tab, and this will automatically start playing the animations. Now, if you recall a second ago, this was a one frame file. So there's no animation here. As you can see, if I hit play here in the environment, nothing happens. So how is it that we are seeing animations happening on this infographic? So let's go back and take a look at the file in detail. If you look at the things that are moving, in this case, the windmill and this little circle arrows and the arrows down at the bottom showing energy going from the windmill to the houses. Let's go ahead and take a look inside those actual movie clips to see what's going on. Now, when I select the windmill, for example, here, I notice under its properties that it is an actual movie clip. Now, remember, the differences between a movie clip, a graphic, and a button. A movie clip has a timeline of its own, which will play back no matter what, unless you tell it not to via code. So if you haven't put a stop action in the movie clip to say do not play, the movie clip will play its timeline. So if it has more than one frame, it will play back those frames. Okay, so that follows that animation that we see now that is occupying one single frame here must be inside that movie clip, inside the movie clip called windmill. So let's go ahead and double click it, and when I double click it to get into that movie clip, you notice that the animation is actually playing inside that movie clip. So that is an embedded animation. We have that entire timeline of that movie clip playing in one frame on the scene 1. That is inside that particular movie clip. That timeline it's going to play. For a graphic, graphics will not play, or they will play once, or they will play looping if you add the extra frames of animation on the main timeline. Remember, graphics have a timeline of their own, and they will try to play that timeline, but for that timeline to play, you have to have matching frames on the main timeline. Up on scene 1, you have to have the exact same amount of frames as that animation. So if you only have one frame, like in this case, only the first frame of that graphic will play back, nothing else. So graphics, even though they have a timeline, they won't play back unless you provide the same amount of frames on the main timeline so that they match the graphics timeline. And or if you then you can control that graphic to say play once or loop or whatever it is that you want that graphic to do. But if you only have one frame, only the first frame of the graphic will play, as opposed to the self-contained movie clip, which will play all the frames. And a button is just a button. A button will have only 4 states, but it will the fact that you tagged it as a button will tell the program that you should treat it as a button. That means it's waiting for you to either roll over or click it or activate something on the button, just like any other button would do. It's not going to play any animation. It is not going to be doing anything because the timeline for a button only has 4 states. So With that said, you'll notice that this is, like I said, a self-contained animation. Okay. Now, let's go ahead, and this is on canvas, like I said, and it's only playing on one frame. Let me go ahead and create a new file. I'm going to make this file action script. Click create, and it's just going to create a stage for us. I'm going to go to the library, and with the previous movie still open, I'm going to make use of that libraries of that movie clips library to access some of the files that we had already worked on. So in this case, I'm going to bring in the windmill into my new movie. So I'll click and drag, and you'll notice that that movie moved from the previous movies library into my library. Now there's the windmill. Okay. Notice that this is only a one frame environment. I only see one frame. And yet when I double click to get into that, to dig into that movie, I see that it has animation. Let me go ahead and test this here on the environment itself. Let me hit play, and you'll notice that nothing happens, and that is because there's only one. As far as the program is concerned, there's only one frame in this movie clip. But if I test the movie by hitting Control Enter or Command Return, I actually see the animation happening in there. So this gives you a lot of flexibility for placing complex or advanced or let's say the complex is the best word to use, to animations that you have created, say for backgrounds or items that will be animated on their own that don't have anything to do with what is happening on the real timeline, and that the animations will play through and through. So that is, even if you have them on one frame, they will still play on the actual movie clip. You will actually see the animation happening. So exporting them as such will automatically create that animation for you, and it will allow you to work. So both in the AS3 environment and the Canvas environment, you have the ability to embed these animations, provided that the animations themselves are created inside what we call the movie clip. Now, if you do this with a graphic, let's say, for example, let me go into this folder and see if I brought in a graphic for any. No, these are all movie clips. I can tell you they're movie clips because I am looking at the icons. So let's go ahead and create an actual graphic. So I'm going to create a graphic here. I'm going to select that. I'm going to go to modify, convert to symbol, and in this instance I'm going to call it graphic, and I'm going to call it oval just to give it a name. I'll click OK on that, and that becomes a graphic. Now let me go ahead and double click on that, and I am going to morph this oval. I am going to create some kind of shape tween on this. So let me go to frame 30, press F6, right click on that, add shape tween, and then on frame 30 I am going to change the shape of this object. Okay, so there's some sort of animation going on there. Okay, so we see that we have that animation happening inside the oval movie clip. This occupies the exact same environment. Let me create a new layer, cut this item from the layer 1, which shares the exact same thing with the rotating windmill. So I'm going to cut that, going to cut it, then I'm going to go to layer 2, and I'm going to paste in place so that it is in the exact same spot. Now you'll notice that if I double click on it, let me switch my tool to the arrow tool, double click on it, I still have my animation in there, so nothing's changed. Let me go back to scene 1, and when I test this file, you will notice that the animation doesn't happen. And that is because this is a graphic, and I only have one frame playing. It only plays the first frame, nothing else. The embedded animation, however, from the movie clip will play through and through. If I were to change that this graphic to a movie clip, then the animation will play. Let me switch that from graphic to movie clip. And I'm going to do this on the instance on the stage and see what happens. Let's go ahead and play that movie, and now you see that the movie clip actually does play all the frames. So that is a significant difference between a graphic and a movie clip. Now that done, let me go back and change that again to a graphic, the instance of that item on the stage, not the actual thing on the library. The actual thing on the library is still a graphic. So I haven't changed that. But what I'm going to do is on the stage, I am going to change, I'm going to give those two frames, those two layers, 30 frames of existence. So I'm going to select frame 30, and I'm going to press F5 on the keyboard. Now you'll notice that I gave enough leeway to that second layer to play the animation. This is the only way a graphical animation will play on the actual file. So when I do this, I give enough frames for the graphic to play back. And this is where that instance of, okay, so I have this graphic now and it's animated by default. But if I want to stop it from animating, then I go select the actual graphic, go to the looping option, and this is where we saw when we talk about frame picking and lip syncing, we see these options. So we have the ability to keep it looping if we want to. We could play the graphic once and that's it, or we can stop it at any single frame. So I can say stop at a single frame. So when I play this back, the animation stops. Or I can say play it only once. And if I do that, it'll play only once. Now, this seems like it's looping. And the reason for that is because the movie plays back all the way to 30, and then it comes back to frame 0, and it plays again, because that is the nature of the movie, to keep on playing back. Now, that is really not looping. It only played back once. So if I make this 2 seconds long, let's say, it's only going to play once, and it's going to stay there for a second, wait until it loops back and plays back again on the timeline. However, you'll notice that my self-contained movie clip, it's playing through and through no matter what. So as a matter of organizing your workflow, if you have elements in animations that are not interactive or that don't have any code controlling them, then my advice is that you start pre-planning those animations, whether you do it via a flow chart or on paper. Make sure that you organize before you actually get to work. So that way you know what movie clips will be self-contained, what movie clips will need interaction, and then how to populate your master movie based on how you define those elements, how you're going to be, or your users will be interacting with those elements or not interacting if they're just simply background animations.